The Ruins of Berez. What a great place to visit if you're playing Curse of Strahd. I'm going to show you how to make these, as well as a channel update and a huge announcement for the largest, most epic diorama I have ever created. That's this week on Tabletop WitchCRAFT. Hey there, and welcome back to Tabletop WitchCRAFT. This week, we're going to make some tiles for the Ruins of Berez. I'm playing Curse of Strahd right now. We are in desperate need of these tiles. I made these in about 2 days. These are really quick and easy to make, lots of detail, and they're going to look great on the table. Now, if you're wondering where have I been if these only took me 2 days to make, well, it's because I've been working on a large 3-foot by 6-foot diorama for Wormwood Gaming, where it's going to be a diorama of my airship floating over a massive thunderstorm through floating frozen islands, being attacked by a fire dragon and an ice dragon. Lots of lightning, flame effects, you name it. It's going to be over the top. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. Alright, so in just a few weeks, David from Terraintronics and Gerard Boom of Shifting Lands are going to be coming all the way to Maine to hang out with me for a few days, and we're going to create a bunch of really cool stuff. If you want to see what that is, you can do so either by liking and subscribing to the channel, or you can get an early sneak peek of all that work by hanging out with us live at night while we're working on some of it. You can do so by joining me over on Patreon. It's support there that really helps fund my channel. Speaking of helping out the channel, if you want to support it, you can also do so by visiting Firelight Fables Candle Company. TWC10 at checkout gets you 10% off your entire order, and a small kickback comes to me. Now, one last thing I want to mention I'm really excited about. I've got a new family member that I'm going to introduce to everybody here in just a few weeks. So like and subscribe. Make sure you follow me. And in about 2 or 3 videos from now, I'm going to introduce him to the world. I'm super excited. All right, if you're ready, let's go grab some supplies and let's get crafting. All right, so I burned the Sacred Grove candle for all of my time in the studio while making this video. Another really great candle by Firelight Fables Candle Company. Now, I'm just showing you some of my old work here on the channel. These were swamp tiles that, a lot of detail, some really fun aspects, but these shapes are a lot more organic. I made the original tiles back in the day when I really had my mind stuck on the 1-inch grid system. And once you can break free from that, it really offers a lot more freedom when the time comes for crafting. So what I'm doing now is just really trying to get a rough shape of what I want each tile to look like. And I'm just digging back into my old bits. Now I'll put a link up above to this video where I made all of these cast wall pieces. This will allow you to make an entire city in no time. It's really great. And I had a bunch of other stuff here. I used some Merlin's Magic for the stones that you see, and just some bark from my yard and some twigs. Now, placing it within the area of the water that we're going to pour here, which is going to be made out of resin in just a few minutes, we can get an idea roughly of the size of the piece of cardboard we're going to need that we're going to mount everything to. Surface primer was used on all the bits. I used it on the plaster, on the wood, everything. Just a really good base coat to get you started. And as I mentioned before, the walls to these are a really great video for you to check out. I made a big city in just a couple of days, and what I did was take all of the broken pieces from some of my casts and I incorporated them into this video. It's a great way to use up some of your old stuff that you have laying around. Now here's all of the colors that I used. I wanted to keep everything really dark and kind of dingy. I put a glove on and it allows me to quickly paint everything. I don't care if I'm mixing paints. You can see I dropped that right into the gray paint. Doesn't matter. We're just going to blend it right in, throw it down, and keep painting. You got to remember, we're doing the Swamp of Berez in Curse of Strahd. Now for those of you that don't know, the sun really doesn't exist in Barovia, which is where the game takes place, so it's always overcast and cloudy. And I imagine that this drowned city is just fully overgrown with weeds and muck, and the water itself I picture to be jet black. Absolutely no color, no green, no brown, I just want it to be really eerie looking. So going with the black epoxy resin by Let's Resin, that stuff is like motor oil. It's amazing stuff, and that's what I'm going to use for all the water here. Once we have these painted up, we can do a little dry brush of, some green and some lighter colors just to add that moss effect. But we're going to add a lot of greenery later on too. Now, you'll see a little piece of acrylic sheet. That's very important to use because we're going to literally hot glue stuff to that acrylic sheet as well. And it's going to keep everything in place when we pour our epoxy resin. Right now, I'm just building up a little island with some DOS clay. You don't want to make this too thick. Keep it nice and thin. You don't need a lot, and it's going to cure really nice. Adding a little bit of texture to it because we're not going to do much to this. Again, this is a really quick and easy build. There'll be all the texture we need for a mucky surface. And this part really is fun. All you have to do is just use your imagination. However you think these buildings would deteriorate, place them down. I used some Eileen's tacky glue for the stuff that I was adhering to the clay. The clay has not yet cured. And then anything that was also glued down to the acrylic sheet, hot glue. Now you see a few different Sure Bonder hot glue guns in this. This is a high temp gun. It really heats the glue up and keeps it hot so you can work really quick. But in just a few minutes, I'm gonna switch over to a new Sure Bonder hot glue gun that I have, which is a dual temperature. And it was really nice because when I go to pour sort of like the reservoir around the perimeter of these islands where I want the shape of the water to be, I didn't want the hot glue really hot because then it would kind of flatten out pretty quick. And I wanted it to be built up pretty high because that height is what's going to allow me to get some depth to that resin. Now right here we're doing a dry brush of green, kind of an odd different thing to do, but that really added a nice mossy, mucky effect to the mud. Once we hit it up with some of this Agrax Earthshade, don't freak out, I didn't use a lot, it was only a very little bit needed in the video. It really turned out nice having that green dry brush underneath. Now, I don't know if you're going to have all these different types of plants and leaves and stuff like that, but I literally just dug through my bin and grabbed all this stuff. These things right here, I still have not found a use for those. They look like big sponges. I'm not a fan of those. I might just throw them out. But all this other stuff I incorporate into my marsh islands. I stuck with, these vines right here, stuff that looked like tall marsh grass, and just incorporated that wherever I felt it needed something. Now, this is probably the most expensive piece of greenery that's going into these, and it's also the most delicate. It's by Diorama Precipice. They make, in my opinion, the absolute best foliage that you can use for really dioramas, but also tabletop gaming as well. You'll see that I stuck this in the corner and out of play area, and then to hide the hot glue, just stick another grass tuft in front of it. It locks everything in place. Now we have some really cool details, some very delicate stuff, but it really shouldn't ever get in the way of using this in game. And you can see how I mentioned placing some grass tufts on the acrylic sheet, some of the wood, and so on. It's going to look really nice once we pour that resin over it. And the gamer grass right here, huge fan of them. They absolutely have the stickiest tufts I have ever used in my life. Huge, huge fan of their grass tufts. All right, now to protect this tray, I always advise working in a tray like this when you're pouring resin in case there's an accident. It doesn't go all over your table or worse. And I just lightly tape down some parchment paper. It doesn't really tape that well because nothing's supposed to stick to it, but it works just enough for the purpose of this project. Now this is the other Sure Bonder gun I talked about. That thing worked awesome. You can see how I got a nice bump of hot glue around where I want the water. And I had no idea if the epoxy resin was going to stick to this tape, so I just took some of this mold release and placed it down, and it was totally fine. It came off real easy. All right, so not to be confused with motor oil, this black epoxy resin by Let's Resin, absolutely awesome stuff. I like to make sure you mix it by volume, mix it for 5 minutes, dump it into a new cup, mix it for another 5 minutes, and it hardens really nice. I tried using this bag method, which works awesome. But as you can see, this bag itself had like a secured bottom, so it was like it split in two when I cut it. So if you're gonna pour it into a bag, make sure when you cut it, it's just gonna come out from one area. Now we add some details, leaves, some small knock leaves as well for some greenery. And you can see how easy this comes right off of that parchment paper. And because we had that mold release on the glue, I believe that's what made that come off so easy as well. And these are all set and ready for the game table. Alright, so you can see there really isn't that much that goes into making such a really cool swamp tile. If you were lucky enough to build these walls from one of my previous videos, you got some of them laying around, it's going to make it that much faster. If not, just make some out of foam and you'll have them done in no time. Now I am really excited for this diorama that I'm working on. It's again a 3-foot by 6-foot diorama that I'm making that's going to go inside of the modular gaming table by Wormwood Gaming. I've got David from Terraintronics helping me with all the electrical, lighting, flames, and ice flames, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And Sam Lenz is painting the dragons for me. I'm so excited. I just really can't wait to see this all come together. All right, like, subscribe, follow the channel, follow me on my other social media, Instagram as well. I post a lot of cool stuff there. And until next time, I'll see you around.